Hey, what's up, Silas? I'm going to be reading you something from Politifact. This is part of my Faux Checking series, and the Faux Checking is kind of a touch to the whole fake news thing. And I think there's something worse than fake news, which is faux news, which is something that is not necessarily just outright wrong. Because if something is outright wrong, it's a lot easier to tell that somebody has been completely wrong about something. For example, if let's say you inherit something from someone. You inherit a store from somebody, and in that store you're selling certain merchandise. And then you come in and you say, "Oh well, when we came in, we didn't have any of this product. We didn't have any of this product to sell. Nothing was being sold." Technically, if that person had already been selling that product already, but it was in the storeroom in the back, someone can come in and say, well, that person wasn't lying. It wasn't like fake. He wasn't completely unfactual about that. Technically, they weren't selling it because it was still in the back and they didn't have access to that. That person at that store had actually been having a deal with somebody else with a different kind of company, and he wasn't in the whole supply chain with that. So that's something that can happen. And then if somebody is checking that in that way, you can get to the point where somebody who wants to support this person making that claim that they weren't selling that thing because it wasn't in there in the supply chain, they might be able to cover for this person. You might think, okay, maybe I'm being unfair to this person, and then you'll continue believing what that initial person says, and the person who's checking that for you, who's kind of taking you away from just the factual things that are in there and kind of massaging the truth and kind of making you focus on one thing. And now this is something that I think a lot of people do also in personal conversations. They go in and they say, you make a statement about something, and this is why I push people, when you're making certain socio-political statements, be very exact with your words. Because one thing that I have noticed, people literally mean things figuratively, especially about politics, especially in my estimation, Americans. When they say things about politics, they'll be very figurative in their language. And then they will hold you on a very literal sense on the things that you say. So it's best to kind of avoid giving them room to obfuscate from your primary point and then try to focus and insert what's going to get them away from the point. And this is something that's left, right, center, whatever. It's something that is a common thing that is done. I think it comes more from religion, because I see this done in religion as well. Something to kind of defend your faith. You're going to find something else to make you be able to also believe it and also defend it out there. So right here, I'm going to go with this statement from Politifact. I've done this a few other ones. I shall go and talk about this with other kind of posts as well. There's going to be a link somewhere where I've also archived it so you can see it, because the last time I did this was one fact check involving the Kyle Rittenhouse case, and I think this is something that a lot of people have seen, certain statements that were made, and then they actually listen or they actually watch the actual trial, and they were like, why were people just completely lying? There's still people out there who still think Kyle Rittenhouse shot black people. That one was something that was completely 100% known. The Independent recently, which is supposedly a big newspaper, I think in the United Kingdom, they had an actual headline, and it wasn't a headline, but it was, I think, a pull quote in an actual article talking about that. There's still people out there who truly believe that. And with many of these things, when you first get your first impression, how often do people go back and rethink those impressions? So if you have this ability, if somebody says something and it's false, and then somebody comes in and says, okay, no, they actually were true because they meant this one thing. The first fact check that you check, you might not go back in and actually check that. You might say, okay, I trust these people. Or if somebody says something accurate, and then that person says, no, it's false, and you don't actually get to the point of reading the actual the actual explanation of why they're saying this is false, then how often do you actually go back in and check it? And that's what I'm seeing with some of these things. So right here, this is the actual statement I'm going to be talking about, and I've double checked, and the actual version that is on the Politifact site is still the same as the one that I archived shortly after the actual trial that was over, because the previous one that I did, they added a rather big change to it right after the trial. I mean, I'm talking about the things, but they still accepted their actual estimation of it. So with Politifact, for those of you who don't know, it's a site where they go in and mostly political things that are said by certain people, they'll go in and fact check it, and they have a different kind of meter here for false. They have pants on fire, which is like the super uber duper false. Then they have like mostly false, and they have like a true one. I think that might be the 4. There might be other kind of sections. I might double check that later. But this is the statement. This was on August 31st of 2020. I have several videos talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. This information was available the day of and the day after. This was a very well documented actual event that happened with Kyle Rittenhouse there. So Donald Trump was asked about this, and This is what Donald Trump supposedly said on August 31st, 2020, in a media briefing. He says, video shows Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old charged with killing 2 protesters in Kenosha, was trying to get away from them, fell, and they violently attacked him. Now here it says false. From just hearing this or from seeing this, let's say you've actually watched it or not or whatnot, what do you think the basis for Politifact saying this is false would be? Just think about it now before we get into the actual reading of it, before I get to the actual reading of it. If you haven't read this before, what do you think the basis is? I'm thinking here, it's like fell, okay, well, what's fell? Fell, was he tripped? Was he running? Was he something else? Like, is he not necessarily a fall? Did he actually just go down to the ground? Like, what's not here? Then violently attacked him. What was violently? Were they kind of just helping him up and then he thought they were being attacked? What is the part here that you might think was actually false? Because remember, this is a statement, was trying to get away from them. Was he not trying to get away from them? Maybe you're saying, okay, he wasn't trying to get away from them. He was actually running to something, so he didn't really care about the people he was getting away from, so that's kind of a false thing to say. What do you think was actually in here? Now just keep that in mind if you have that in mind, and then let's actually get to the actual reading. So right here it opens up with just a picture. A police stand near a garbage truck ablaze during the protests over shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha on August 24th of 2020. Now, here you see something ablaze. A garbage truck ablaze. Is this the activities that you normally see at a typical protest, or would this be more riotous behavior? Recall the kind of behavior that was happening on the January 6th that they're saying was an insurrection, was something much more terrific, much more terrifying than it. How many things were set ablaze in that situation? Yes, there was some chaos going on, but they say you can't call it a protest, you can't call it some congregation, you can't call it some kind of rally, some kind of event like that, because of the actions that were going on from the people in there. So why does this still be called a protest when this is something that is not necessarily, it's the mostly non-fiery protest? Is that what they're saying here? Okay, so let's go with this. Trump paints this from Haley B. Miller on September 1st of 2020. Trump paints false picture of Kyle Rittenhouse shooting ahead of Kenosha visit. And here we go with, if your time is short. Kyle Rittenhouse tripped and fell as a group of people pursued him on the night he allegedly killed 2 protesters and injured a 3rd. That's what they're actually stating, that is what happened, and that's what we've seen in the video. But Trump's claim leaves out vital context that Rittenhouse ran away from protesters after prosecutors say he had already shot and killed somebody. So you see that. He's saying, okay, what he said was entirely correct. Everything he said was correct, but we're saying it is false because of things he did not even say. Trump did not say that nobody was shot. He did not even refer to why the person was being shot. But the statement of he was trying to get away from them, fell, and then was violently attacked him is, accordingly to these people, false because of something Trump did not even refer to. So with this fault checking thing, I'm saying, when you use your language, you get to a point where you don't try to insert things that they might take out of context and focus on. But they even go further to do this where they just add things. They say, you didn't even say this. You're supposed to say this. You're supposed to add this to this. So they'll do it anyway. But let them do it. Let them add other things or take away things that were not in there and make them look as absurd as possible when they try to fact check you. And people think this is a respectable site. Okay. Editor's note, this item was updated to make clear that we are rating whether Trump described what happened accurately, not the separate question of whether what happened amounted to self-defense or as charged by local prosecutors, homicide, and other offenses. So again, this is ridiculous. I don't know if you don't think it's ridiculous. I'm trying to switch back to see if it's the same here. It's the same here on the archived one. I think that's a ridiculous thing to do. What does that have to do with false? He's actually made a statement that's 100% accurate about this, but they feel the need to focus on this other thing, so they'll say this is false. How many people will just say this is false? And they read this and they say, okay, Politifact said this was false, and they violently attacked him. So people coming to the actual trial after having seen this back in September 1st of 2020, just seen this first thing, and I've talked about this, how many people will actually see the Politifact false thing when it comes up in a notification on a social media platform? Okay, let's say 100 people actually see it on social media. 10 of them actually end up clicking to come to the Politifact actual thing from the actual site once it goes there, and then they get here. Then maybe of those who actually read the thing, maybe 5 of them will actually scroll down to actually see if your time is short. Then they'll see here, okay, but he leaves out the claim. So he leaves out the claim that ran away from protesters. But yes, again here, it does not say anything. So if your time is short, Kyle Rittenhouse tripped and fell as a group of people pursued him on the night he allegedly killed 2 protesters and injured a 3rd. But Trump's claim leaves out vital context that Rittenhouse ran away from protesters after prosecutors say he had already shot and killed somebody. Part of why I'm repeating this is you have to understand how many people have come to this. So the amount of people, the 5, let's say it's 3 or 4 now out of the 100 that see that initial thing, decide to come. They're already invested and they feel, okay, my time is short, because some people's time is short, but they think I've come all the way here. But by the time you come to here, they already remove out the part that Trump says that fell and violently attacked him. That's a key part. They come here and now it's already on, oh, the 2 protesters were just pursuing him. And then he shot more people after having killed somebody already. These people were just running after him. And then he just killed these people who were just running, jogging along with him. So already they've removed a key part here. They're already obfuscated to that part. You see, this item was updated to make clear that we are rating whether Trump described what happened accurately, not the separate question of whether what happened amounted to self-defense. You've already removed the aspect that Trump was accurate that these people violently attacked him. So some people might have actually read these. Some, in general, normal, well-meaning people would have read this and come to this point and approach the actual trial thinking that there was never actually a case of self-defense, because they don't really understand that there was a violent attack when these people approached him. There's no mention of Gage Rosenkrantz having a gun. There's no mention of him being slammed on the head with a skateboard. There's no mention of somebody grabbing at the gun. There's no mention of the jump kick man kicking him in the face. There's no mention of the person with a rock knocking his hat off as he was running before he tripped and fell. All these things happened. There's no mention that he was running towards a police line. Like, this is all the context has been taken out. They've taken out all the context that Trump actually meant when he said they violently attacked him. Instead of fleshing that out, they focus you on something that is not even mentioned. So I'll just do a quick skim through this. I don't know if it's even a point. Let me just read this, because a lot of people say, okay, you're taking these things out of context. Let me just read through this, and then I'll just finish off at the end. You can end listen. You can stop listening to this now, because this is what the main point to say. But what I want to do is, by reading it, is showing you that now, from those 3 or 4 people who actually end up getting to this point to read the editor's note, how many more people actually go forward to this? But this is the content that they're putting out there. Okay. Now, President Donald J. Trump visited Kenosha on September 1st of 2020, and as the city reels from a shooting of a black man by police and the shooting deaths of 2 protesters during the night of chaos. Again, very little detail on the shooting that was in there. But anyway, so Jacob Blake was shot. Okay, here it is. Jacob Blake was shot in the back 7 times at close range by Officer Rustin Shesky on August 23rd of 2020, as he walked away from officers and tried to get in an SUV with 3 of his children inside. The shooting left him paralyzed from waist down, according to his family. They haven't really added here that Jacob Blake admitted that he had a knife that he was reaching to. They don't really add the fact that the police had been called, because Jacob Blake was known to the police. The mother, I think, of these children, or somebody who had physically assaulted before, had called and said, we need your help. He's assaulting us. He's hurting us. Can you come and help us? That was the whole premise in this. They don't add the fact that he was told, okay, don't go to the car, don't go to the vehicle, and then he decided to go. Jacob Blake has admitted all of this in that. And I don't know if that was known to the people who were protesting and rioting, but those are some things that are being left out. So we've talked about how they're adding things. This is focusing on something that Trump did not say, but what are they not saying here? If they're saying Trump is not being accurate with the actual context of why Kyle Rittenhouse was in that situation, and then they go here and they leave out certain things to set the accurate context. So if the estimation was these people really care about setting the context about actual things, why would they do this? Now I'm going to read this, what Trump said here, and Trump, as you can recall, he had a stilted way of talking. It's just a stutter, bro. It's just a stutter, bro. Like the kind, like Brandon right now. It's just a stutter, bro. But when Trump was mocked, but he does have a stilted way of speaking. This is not just in the politics sense where you say certain things to keep some kind of vagary in what you say. You say other people said something. The video said this. Not I said this. The video said this. People said this. It's a common thing that politicians do. A lot of politicians and public speakers, you'll find them saying this. Not I say this, but people said this. Then it gives you a kind of shield from it. But anyway, this is a stilted way Trump talks. So let's get to it here. You saw the tape as I saw, Trump said. And he was trying to get away from them, I guess. It looks like. And he fell, and then they were very violently attacked him. And it was something that we're looking at right now, and it's under investigation. He went on to say of Rittenhouse, I guess he was in very big trouble. He would have been, he probably would have been killed. So here we go. The president correctly described some minor details about that night, but overall his comments grossly mischaracterized what happened, leaving out that by the time of the events he described, prosecutors said Rittenhouse had already shot and killed a man. In this fact check, we are not examining the question of whether Rittenhouse acted in self-defense as his attorney claims. We are examining whether Trump provided an accurate description of what happened by focusing only on a portion of the events that night. He is not. Let's take a look. Okay, and as I mentioned again, they focused on a portion of what happened in the Jacob Blake incident. They didn't say who called them there. They didn't say what else he was doing there. They didn't say what Jacob Blake was trying to do as the police, before the police shot him. So this whole idea of focusing on a portion is something that people do because you're actually talking about a certain thing. What was the actual question that Trump was asked before him giving this explanation about it? So he was asked about Kyle Rittenhouse, but then he's supposed to tell about all these other people that did all these other things. Okay, so how the shootings unfolded. Let's see if they actually say more about this. Details of the August 25th, 2020 shootings have emerged through eyewitness videos and criminal complaint. So here, let's actually click a link to the eyewitness video, so I'll see if it actually comes out and if that information is actually there. Now again, how many people actually decide to click and go all the way to these points and actually see what's actually there? Because I actually watched these videos the day after. I was focusing on this a lot, as I've mentioned before. So you can see here, he is running away right there in that video. This person comes, that's a violent attack. That's not a violent attack. So you see they're saying, okay, so this part is okay because we've seen in this video. Is that this falling or is that being tripped? Is that being knocked down? So you can see what's happening with this video. Like this might get banned. This could get banned off of YouTube if I'm actually showing that. I'm going to post this on YouTube. But you can see that this was there from the day of, like the day of, the night of. So that's what happened in it. If you can see the actual previous one, I don't know if they have the previous video here with actually happening with, okay, so now he walks to the police line. He gets to the police line and then they say, okay, we can't deal with you right now. They wave him off, and then he turns himself in later. So that's actually in there. So I don't know if they actually have any case of what happened actually before. So they actually show this. You can see this is actually explained. When is this from? This is from published on August 26th. This is like the day after. It was August 25th was when this happened. So this information was there and available. How many people are actually coming to actually see all this information? They show the previous one with him actually being attacked by Jojo Rosenbaum, and then he was chased down by that person in that situation as well. He was violently attacked by that person before shooting that first person. So nobody he actually shot had not violently attacked him. So even if Trump was saying the violently attacked was after being shot, that actually does apply to these shooting right here on the street and the initial first one, because that video was also available. It's not there in that actual link, but it's actually available. So anyway, so here's what we know. Joseph Rosenbaum, 36, approached Rittenhouse and the reporter interviewing him the night and began to chase Rittenhouse after he did a juke move. And Rosenbaum threw a plastic bag at Rittenhouse, but it didn't hit him. Did he know? Is he like, I'm throwing a plastic bag, there's nothing in this, and then chucks it? Or do you not know what's in there? The two ended up in a parking lot, and the reporter told authorities that Rosenbaum tried to grab Rittenhouse's gun. Rittenhouse fired 4 shots, and Rosenbaum dropped in the ground in front of him. So he was chasing him, lunged at him, grabbed the gun. In the legality sense of it, once you grab a gun, you are technically considered armed yourself, and that's a situation where some of these shootings happen. Now, depending on the things around how you got to grab that gun, they could be if somebody's chasing after you, like in the Ahmaud Arbery case, they were chasing after him, and then he tried to grab the gun in self-defense. That's a self-defense move. But if somebody's running away from you with a weapon, and then you run after him and you jump after him and grab his gun, that is not necessarily the same kind of self-defense. What the people did on the street when Kyle Rittenhouse was on the ground and they went up and grabbed the gun, it's more similar to what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. When Ahmaud Arbery was running away from these people, and these people went to him while he was on the ground, they were in the vehicle, and then they jumped off the vehicle, and then he grabbed the gun. He was in the similar position as Rittenhouse was when he was on the ground and in these situations, and that's why you see the different court cases coming out in that sense. Okay, so in the video, Rittenhouse can be heard saying that, saying on his phone, "I just killed somebody. I just killed someone." Rittenhouse began running slowly down the street as a crowd began to follow him, with some people shouting, "Get him," and shouting, "He just shot someone." Rittenhouse tripped and fell. As you can see, he did not trip and fall. He was hit. He's not, okay, so I guess he was hit and things like that, and as he was running after being hit and things like that, he fell. So you could say that. Some of the people were saying brain him. That wasn't actually written in here. In some of the videos you hear people saying brain him, and that's why some might be part of why some of the people tried to knock his head off. He said he was hit with a rock. He said he was feeling a bit woozy. Think about the adrenaline, think about the shock and all the things that's going on with that whole situation and being this situation. Okay, so after that, Anthony Huber, 26, ran up to Rittenhouse with a skateboard in one hand and appeared to hit him with it before, it wasn't clear, appeared to hit him with it before reaching for Rittenhouse's gun. Rittenhouse fired one round that hit Huber in the chest and killed him. Rittenhouse sat up and pointed his gun at Gage Grosenkrantz, 26, who had started to approach him. Grosenkrantz took a step back and put his hands in the air, but then moved towards Rittenhouse, who fired a shot that hit Grosenkrantz in the arm. Now here it is debated as to whether he actually did point the gun at him. It's definitely admitted that Grosenkrantz did admit. Okay, here it says Grosenkrantz had a handgun. It is unclear whether Grosenkrantz was pointing the gun at Rittenhouse or if Rittenhouse saw that Grosenkrantz had a gun. Now here, Grosenkrantz on the stand, in cross-examination by Rittenhouse's defense team, actually admitted that he had his hands up and Kyle did not fire until Grosenkrantz had the gun pointed at Kyle Rittenhouse. That's something that he admitted by himself. They haven't decided to admit that. They haven't decided to update this with that yet. Okay, so let's see if there's anything in here. Another thing not mentioned in this is after Grosenkrantz was in the hospital, they had one of his best friends supposedly went to see him in the hospital, and he had a Facebook or social media post saying that Grosenkrantz had told him that his one regret was not having emptied his entire gun into Kyle Rittenhouse. Now that person went on in the court case, and he said that he lied about that post. He just made that up. So you can have that whether you believe he lied or not, or whether you believe he's saying the truth and he was trying to cover for his friend. That's up to you. But that's some of the information that's not being brought in by Politifact. So let's say the missing information paints false picture. So what is the missing information that they're speaking about here? So Trump's comments completely overlook the fact that people started following him after he allegedly shot and killed someone. He also claims protesters violently attacked Rittenhouse, but that is not fully supported by the videos either. You saw the video yourself. Do you not consider these to be violent attacks? When somebody is chasing someone down, when they hit somebody in the head, when they hit you with an actual skateboard, do you consider that personally to be violent attack or not? Or do you consider it to not be? And again, this is an incident. Not here they're showing this tragedy in Waukesha, which was somebody who drove his vehicle through. It's an SUV tragedy in this one. Oh, it's this little accident. He was running away from the thing, and he's like swerving and hitting people and things like that. That's not really violent action. These people are absurd. These are absurd human beings. These are not serious people that should be taken seriously. Because of this faux news, this faux checks, it's a pernicious thing that's going on. I think you need to notice that this isn't happening, and you've probably noticed it. Just watching this and this content, you're probably hearing this and thinking, yeah, I've actually seen this before. You might have done it with yourself. I know when I had certain beliefs, I would catch myself doing this, and I'm trying to avoid doing this, and part of that is by reading these, by talking about these, and trying to see different things. So in my estimation, that was fully supported that he was violently attacked. If somebody chases you, these are the same people who get triggered off of words. Remember that. These are the same people that say words themselves are some kind of attack. These people that say silence is violence. Yet, being knocked to the ground, having somebody knock your hat off in that sense. Kyle Rittenhouse said there's a rock. Being chased down by these people, being crowded in that sense. Somebody coming up in your Twitter, somebody going on social media and putting dislikes on your YouTube video. You can dislike my video if you're on YouTube and you don't like it. And if I had a way to leave it on, I would leave them on so you could actually see them. But anyway, that's not in there. But that's harassment. That is something that people need to be protected from. But this situation being mobbed by this many people running after you in that situation, in this tense situation, that's not some kind of attack on somebody. He's supposed to just stand up and take it, like one of the prosecutors said. Oh, he brought a gun to a knife. He brought a gun to a knife fight. Why was he doing this? It wasn't a gun to a knife fight. But it's like, why didn't he just take the beating? He wasn't man enough to just put the gun down and then face off with Rosenbaum. Who speaks this way? These people are just, they're odd people. Okay, so that was not fully supported by the videos. As I say, I think it was fully supported in the videos that he was being violently attacked by those people. That was in there. You can say Rosenkrantz did not violently attack him yet, but he did have a weapon. That was after getting kicked in the face by Jump Kick Man. That was after getting knocked in the head by somebody with a skateboard. That was after somebody had knocked him in the head, knocked his hat off, and things like this. So there was other things going on. That was after Rosenbaum had chased him down, after earlier on saying he's going to kill him. Again, that's allegedly. It was in there. He's not alive to say, but these are things. This is after somebody else had fired a gun in the air. These are things. People were saying, get him. Come on now, people. So witnesses say those who were chasing Rittenhouse were trying to stop him. Again, now here they say the Ahmaud Arbery case, those people should not have actually done a citizen's arrest. They should have just waited. They should have called the cops and waited for the cops to come. In this case, Kyle Rittenhouse was literally running down the street to the cops who were down like a couple of blocks away. These people in the crowd could probably see the cops down there. Yet they were taking in their position to actually stop him. He was running away. He was not an active shooter at that time. He was not firing at other people. He did not fire at anyone who did not approach him first. That is 100% for sure in this situation. The Rittenhouse later walked past a group of police vehicles, hands in the air, and ultimately returned home to a nearby Antioch, Illinois, where he was arrested the next day. Again here, this is definitely not what happened. He had his hands up saying he wanted to turn himself in, and they said, move on, move on, move on. They can't handle that right now because they heard the gunshots, they were seeing the chaos, so they were dealing with that. He went home to Antioch, Illinois, back at his mom's house. His dad lived in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and then later on turned himself in. He wasn't just arrested the next day with like, oh, we know where this person is and we're tracking him down and going to SWAT. He decided to turn himself into the police, and this is what he said. This is allegedly what he said. He decided to turn himself in to the police in a different place, at a different time, after this situation. So what's more, Trump suggested the matter is under investigation, but while Rittenhouse's attorney has indicated that he would argue self-defense, the teen has already been charged with homicide. It's unclear if any investigation will still be open. Come on now, people. Come on now, people. We saw the trial. The FBI released like video recently. We saw there's certain people who were giving some kind of, they were charged for other things, and they're like, we can't have this person come up. The first person, I'm forgetting his name, who had fired a gun before Rosenbaum began chasing after Kyle Rittenhouse and throwing that plastic piece of paper. He was being charged for arson, so that's a different investigation. And since he was being charged for arson later on by the state of Wisconsin, he couldn't actually be called up he couldn't be called as a witness in this actual trial. So there are those things. And do these people really believe that investigations actually stop the second charges have been made? Is that what happens? Or do you have a situation where it's ongoing? So it's not unclear. It's unclear. Yeah, sure. You see, by saying this weasel word, it's unclear. They could say, okay, we don't know. If there's still investigations, well, if it's unclear, then he's not necessarily being wrong. He's not necessarily saying a false thing. He's saying investigation is still going because they still are investigations. Even if you are charged, you can still hire people to investigate the case to come up with content for your defense. So that's something that we know in general for sure. I think most reasonable people would actually think that yes, even after charges, investigations continue. It's not like, okay, we're going to charge this person. The court case just happened. So the court case happened a year after. So you're supposed to charge somebody and then nobody investigates anything on the case. They just close the case and all parties just sit there and take in the actual evidence that's there before, and they don't have access to any other evidence or any other research or any other investigation done after the charges. Who thinks anything works that way? Okay, so even before the comments, Trump drew headlines when he liked a tweet that said, Rittenhouse is an example of why I decided to vote for Trump. Rittenhouse, who is in jail awaiting extradition to Kenosha to face charges, is a Trump supporter. So here we go. Rittenhouse recently said in an interview that he supports Black Lives Matter. Do you believe that? Does it have anything to do with anything that's actually happened with the actual shooting? I don't think it should. The person who drove through Waukesha and things like that, he's admitted, he's shown Black Lives Matter things. He said he was a black nationalist. He's had videos and things like that talking about actually harming white people. Does that matter with the actual situation with him, actually what actually led to the thing? It could inform it, but it doesn't have, it's neither here nor there with the actual action of him driving his vehicle through that actual parade. He also said he's a Christian. Does his Christian faith and things like that come into this? So how much is that actually? He's a supporter of Christianity. So why mention it? They mention that because they're trying to. I think they're trying to put that in your head like this is a Trump supporter. This is a bad Trump supporter. Bad Trump supporter. Okay, so our ruling, finally getting to the end here. Our ruling. Trump said a video shows Rittenhouse. Trump said a video shows Rittenhouse was trying to get away from protesters and fell, and then they violently attacked him. Rittenhouse did fall as a crowd followed him, but Trump's comments leave an incendiary and false picture. By the time he fell, according to criminal charges, Rittenhouse had already shot and killed one person that night. We rate the claim false. So again, I mentioned when they were talking about Jacob Blake, did they talk about what Jacob Blake had done before he was shot? No, they don't. Do they talk about what some of these people had done before they were actually at this event? No, they don't. Do they talk about how, and now this is something that might have come out in the investigations later on after the charges were actually filed about Joseph Jojo Rosenbaum and his multiple cases of actual child abuse and things like that, the worst kind of child abuses that you can actually think of. He's been somebody that's done that. Does it come out that he is actually recently released from a mental institution? They don't talk about that aspect of it. There was definitely times when he was out there saying that N-word that they claim is supposedly violent if it's uttered by certain people to people of other kind of diverse natures. He was yelling that was something that was known. So they talk about those things. So we rate the claim false. This could be maybe a mostly false could be in that. Could be something where I say, okay, I understand why you say mostly false because he's not really talking about it. But if you say mostly false, then I think if they use that, they would have to say mostly. So they have to say, okay, these parts are true, and then maybe this one aspect of it is false. But he never said anything that was technically false. Maybe they could say, okay, mostly true, so mostly false, or mostly true, mostly false. So they say mostly false because they say, okay, the investigations, but we don't know about the investigations. I think they actually kind of know, like, the investigations. People watch CSI. I think people understand these kind of situations. Like most of these police procedural things, it's known enough to people that people understand. Even after charges have been made, investigations continue, and many of these charges, many cases, once there's actually a case, even some cases we see people being released from jail after they're actually in jail or the trial's over because investigations continue, more information comes to light. So this is just my estimation on this. Thank you all for listening. As I mentioned, this is some repetitive content, but I think this is worth repeating. I'm going to do these with a few more videos, a few more content, and maybe I'll just get to points where after I've done that, I'll just say, okay, this is just an example of it, and I'll read it and just give a short kind of explanation of it. But I just want to set these first couple of examples of this actual series of Faux Checks, or people pointing out one small aspect of something that you say and obfuscating and focusing on that and obfuscating from the primary point that you're trying to make. And this technique, this tactic that's done by certain people, right now it's done mostly by people on the political left because I think they're in power and they're the ones who are trying to maintain this power and maintain this messaging, but it's done in other aspects, in other fields. You might do it yourself. If you find yourself doing it, I suggest you don't do it, because once people notice that you do it, I think they'll think less of you. And I think you, even in personal, it's not a good thing to do. I don't think it is. I don't think you appreciate other people doing this to you. I don't know why you think, or why you'd be around people who would appreciate that coming from you. It's not a nice thing to do. And I hope I can, maybe you can see why I think this is even more pernicious than just outright lying. And they double down and they stick to this. And how many of these are supposedly the people who are making the truth? They say half true. So I think this might be better to be half true. Maybe it's like half true, mostly true, half true. They have those things in there. So why couldn't they go with like something like half true of this? Where they say, okay, he was trying to get away from them. That's true, right? Yeah. And, okay, he fell after they violently attacked him. Yeah, that's kind of true there. So I don't understand why they couldn't have gone with like a half true instead. So they in order for them to go with false here, they had to initiate and install and insert something that was not even mentioned. That's how they went with this. So you can say the investigation part. You see, they even talk about the investigation. We're not sure about the investigation. But here with the quote, they don't even mention the investigation in this quote. You see, they keep adding other parts. Then they say the investigation is unsure, we're adding that. So that's something they can say, okay, look, he literally said this, but this is something that he literally said that we can point out was not completely 100% accurate. So trust us, believe us that it's false. Like, no. Even with that, it's something like mostly true. It's like half true. So these are the pernicious things that I see these people doing. You might have noticed as well. Like, share, subscribe if you're listening to this on any of the streaming platforms. And I don't know. There might have been a speed drawing of the Kyle Rittenhouse dough that I did. Might have been in the background. Might have been going on the screen. Might have been showing the actual text. I don't know what was going on in this video. But I'll have more of these later. Till next time. Goodbye.